The girl let the braid drop back with a sigh that seemed to come from her very toes and to exhale forth all the sorrows of the ages. "Yes, it's red," she said resignedly. "Now you see why I can't be perfectly happy. Nobody could who had red hair. I don't mind the other things so much, the freckles and the green eyes and my skinniness. I can imagine them away. I can imagine that I have a beautiful rose-leaf complexion and lovely starry violet eyes, but I cannot imagine that red hair away. I do my best. I think to myself, now my hair is a glorious black, black as the raven's wing, but all the time I know it's just plain red, and it breaks my heart. It will be my lifelong sorrow. I read of a girl once in a novel who had a lifelong sorrow, but it wasn't red hair. Her hair was pure gold, rippling back from her alabaster brown. What is an alabaster brown? I never could find out. Can you tell me? Well, now, I'm afraid I can't, said Matthew, who was getting a little dizzy. He felt as he had once felt in his rash youth, when another boy had enticed him on the merry-go-round at picnic. Well, whatever it was, it must have been something nice because she was divinely beautiful. Have you ever imagined what it must feel like to be divinely beautiful? Well, no, I haven't, confessed Matthew ingenuously. I have often. Which would you rather be if you had the choice? Divinely beautiful or dazzling clever or angelically good? Well, now, I don't know exactly. Neither do I. I can never decide. But it doesn't make much real difference, for it isn't likely I'll ever be either. It's certain I'll never be angelically good, Mrs. Spencer says. The air was full of purple twilight, and far ahead a glimpse of painted sunset sky shone like a great rose window at the end of a cathedral aisle. Its beauty seemed to strike the child dumb. She leaned back in the buggy, her thin hands clasped before her, her face lifted rapturously to the white splendor above. Even when they had passed out and were driving down the long slope to Newbridge, she never moved or spoke. Still with rapt face, she gazed afar into the sunset west, with eyes that saw visions drooping splendidly across that glowing background. Through Newbridge, a bustling little village where dogs barked at them and small boys hooted and curious faces peered from the windows, they drove, still in silence. When 3 more miles had dropped away behind them, the child had not spoken. She could keep silence, it was evident, as energetically as she could talk. "I guess you're feeling pretty tired and hungry," Matthew ventured at last, accounting for her long hesitation of dumbness with the only reason he could think of. "But we haven't very far to go now, only another mile." She came out of a reverie with a deep sigh and looked at him with the dreamy gaze of a soul that had been wandering afar, star-led. "Oh, Mr. Cuthbert," she whispered, "that place we came through, that white place, what was it?" "Well, now, you must mean the avenue," said Matthew after a few moments' profound reflection. "It is a kind of pretty place." "Pretty? Oh, pretty doesn't seem the right word to use, not beautiful either. It's the first thing I ever saw that couldn't be improved upon my imagination. It just satisfied me here." She put one hand on her breast. It made a queer funny ache, and yet it was a pleasant ache. "Did you ever have an ache like that, Mr. Cuthbert?" "Well, now, I just can't recollect that I ever had." "I have it lots of times, whenever I see anything royally beautiful, but they shouldn't call that lovely place the Avenue. There is no meaning in a name like that. They should call it, let me see, the White Way of the Light. Isn't that a nice imaginative name? When I don't like the name of a place or a person, I always imagine a new one, and always think of them so." There was a girl at the asylum whose name was Hepzibah Jenkins, but I always imagine her as Rosalia de Vere. Other people may call that place the Avenue, but I shall always call it the White Way of Delight. Have we really only another mile to go before we get home? I'm glad, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry because this drive has been so pleasant, and I'm always sorry when pleasant things end. Some things still pleasanter may come after, but you can never be sure. And it's so often the case that it isn't pleasanter. That has been my experience anyhow. But I'm glad to think of getting home. You see, I've never had a real home since I can remember. It gives me that pleasant ache again just to think of coming to a really, truly home. Oh, isn't that pretty? Hi everyone, welcome to BookCravings. This time I decided to start this film reading a little bit of Anne of Green Gables, one of the best books I've read this year. This is one of the most popular children's books of all time. Many people are really fond of it. This Folio Society edition is introduced by the great Margaret Atwood, and it is illustrated by Anna C. Lepler. This book is bound in cloth, is blocked with a beautiful design by the artist, and this scene that is illustrated is one of the first scenes when Anne arrives at Green Gables. She's like in the path to Green Gables. This book, as you may see, contains 9 full-page color illustrations and many vignettes. It has the standard Folio Society quality. This book is not a new release. My copy, for example, is the 7th printing, 2016. Anne of Green Gables was first published in 1908. This copy is printed on Abbey Wolf paper. It's a really nice copy, and the Margaret Atwood introduction is the cherry on the top. So I'd like to ask you, what do you think of Anne of Green Gables? Have you read it? It is a pretty book that brings pretty feelings and emotions, you know. And this book is full of these little quotes that, as Anne would say, gives me a thrill. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about Anne of Green Gables and what do you think about this Folio Society copy. See you guys in the next video. Bye bye.